Okay, I'll call this meeting to order. It is December 16th, 2025, and we're here at 9 a.m. to discuss Silver Valley Metal Corp tax exemption. I have the members of Silver Valley Metal Corp online via phone. Could you please state your names?
This is Grant Cooper with Ernst & Young.
Yep, and this is Taylor Noonan with Ernst & Young.
Okay. Who wants to go first?
If you guys want to go ahead and explain to the group what it is that you are seeking, I've given them a very, very brief summary of our very brief 2-line email. So just let us know what's going on.
Okay. Yeah, great. No, I appreciate you guys spending time with us here before the holidays. But just a quick recap here from where the process started. So our original application for Silver Valley Metals was submitted back in November, early November of 2024. We were with you all in late April, early May of 25, where you granted the resolution 63-602-N. That was the statute, and the resolution was 2025-2022. So the matter before you all is the same project. What has changed from the application submission in late 24 through the acceptance in early May 25 is the opening date has slipped back until now Q2 2026. So currently on site, the filtration pump and system is under foundation, and steel structuring is going up. But, with winter coming and some supply chain constraints they had in Q4 of 2025, the mine is not, probably as you know better than us, operational or functional yet. And so our request here is that we're presenting the same project that we spoke about in early May and was agreed. We're still north of $100 million in total investment. We're still planning on creating north of 120 jobs with an average salary around $90,000. And what we're asking for simply is that this 5-year exemption begin when the assets are placed in service. And so we believe that asset placed in service date will be 26 versus 2025 as we thought it would be. And so we're just essentially asking that the agreement continue under the same form and parameters as we all agreed on, just it's beginning in 2026 instead of 2025.
Okay.
So this is Samuel Lovely, Deputy Prosecuting Attorney. I guess that my concern with that is we're only allowed statutorily to do a 5-year exemption. So if we put it off for 1 year, then we have to use a different base year valuation. So if you count 2025, all the improvements in 2025 would start being taxed now as of 26. And then you would only get an exemption for further investments. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that does make sense. And I think part of our confusion there, Sam, is it seems like up until this point in the years of development in the mine site, nothing has been placed into service yet. And that seems to be when the considerable tax increase will occur. So unless you guys know something different that we don't know, we weren't expecting an April tax bill this year to reflect any large change in the valuation of all the parcels.
Well, it wouldn't because you were granted an exemption, but and obviously the assessor is here and he can correct me because he would know better than I would, but I believe that the assessment technically should be based on the improvement, not when it's put into service.
Correct. And Grant, remember our lien date is January 1st which is in 2 weeks. So that vast improvement you have is covered under 602NN as it is written now. So
Okay.
it would, and when it comes down to it, what would be the reasoning to change the start date?
So the reason to change the start date is to maintain the 5 years of exemption where the largest tax burden would fall in the first 5 years of operations. So the goal of this was always to give the mine the best we could from a tax standpoint, the start that it needed to get its operational feet underneath it. So, they continue to be pre-revenue, and they won't be in the revenue until probably later in 2026. So the goal of this overall exemption and abatement process was to keep the property tax assessments low for the first 5 years of operation, and then at the end of that 5-year period, have it flex into the normal taxation for Kellogg and Wardner. So simply stated, if what you're telling me is, the lien date was coming up in January, but for the abatement that we talked about in the middle of May last year, you were about to make a pretty large assessment on the property, then I think that we're fine to carry on as is. But the way that I was seeing the property tax flow in years prior to this was that there was a significant amount of capital investment occurring on the property, and it wasn't triggering a larger assessment value. And the reasoning and the rationale that I thought was being employed was that the assessor's office in the county was waiting until the facility was placed in service to reflect all of the investment dollars and capital improvements that had taken place to the personal property on the land.
And Grant, we had some discussions on that, but then with the granting of this 602NN, it kind of null and voided all of that. So, those concerns, those discussions kind of came to an end. But that would give you 4 years of revenue before it was placed on the tax rolls in 2030.
Well, the increase.
The increase,
Yeah.
correct.
The increased valuation for the improvements.
Right.
Obviously, taxes could adjust based on, your multiplier.
Right.
But their assessed value is fixed in terms of not adding the improvements.
Right.
Yeah.
So basically those would be exempt for 4 years as if indeed you do have revenue.
Well, no,
in
it's really 5. I mean, you're saying 4 years post revenue, but it's really 5 years of exemption.
Yeah.
And including pre-revenue, you get
Right.
that 1 year pre-revenue exemption.
But they'd have 4 years of revenue.
Yes.
And then I would guess the county would expect your revenues to be high enough that you should be able to shoulder the tax bill.
Well, I think there's a logistical issue too. If we were going to, again, because we can only do a 5-year exemption,
Right.
we can't just extend it a year. It has to be based on, we'd have to adjust the valuation, the base valuation, which means you would have to assess what's already been done and then come up with a new valuation in pretty short order.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Because I think there was some reliance, or at least wanting to at least see the report that's due in March before you even considered what the improvements have been for this last year.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that report in March was to be supplied by Silver.
Yes. So I mean that would be my concern if we were talking about kicking out, adjusting some of the other terms. That would be a policy decision for the board to make, and obviously to make any changes. I would argue that if the statute requires us to have a public meeting with special notice to enter into this agreement, I would argue if we're going to amend it in any way, we have to go through that same process. But there could be policy decisions that, the board can make in regards to granting some considerations, but they're just kind of statutory limitations in terms of what we can and can't do. So I think that it might be counterproductive, even from the mine's viewpoint, to reassess at this point. I think they're better off kind of taking the fixed value that they have, but we can certainly go down that road if they insist that they want to.
So perfectly clear on that. I think the goal here was just to keep them in the same agreement, which was for 5 years of the benefit of the value that they were going to be in if everything was assessed at the end of 2025. So the base value year of 2024 was 3.6 million and change, we'll call it, for all the parcels related to the project site in question. So if what you all are telling me is that there was about to be a large increase in the amount of improvements, machinery, and equipment that was going to flow through in 2025, then we're fine to keep things as is, and that's fine, and we can explain that to the mine, and that's fine with us. But the way I was seeing things happen is, the 2023 base value, the 2022 base value, and the 2024 base value were all around the same. So there continued to be investment into the property, and the overall base value ended up being $3.6 million. So we were expecting, but for the abatement and exemption that was already granted, that the 2025 amount would continue to be small this year. If the abatement wasn't there, because again, the site hadn't begun its operations yet, which won't happen here until 2026. So
well, I guess
it's possible I'm confused here.
No, you're not. I think it's a question of actually capturing and could have captured on the improvements, right? So just because it wasn't captured doesn't mean it couldn't have been.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we're at that base value of 3.6, let's just as a number, won't change until the term is done, right?
Right.
So really that base value will carry through for the 5 years, and it won't change until after
After the 5 years.
the 5 years.
It could change incrementally, but basically you're not adding the improvements.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'd have to agree with Samuel. If we changed that, it would require a public meeting, because the city of Kellogg, the fire department, the school district are going to have to weigh in on that. Because I think, in the scheme of things, they're anticipating revenue in 2030. So, and push that out a year, they'd have to be
Notified.
notified and weigh in with their opinions.
Definitely.
Well, so I hear you on all this, and I think that maybe this could be a simpler solution. I don't think we want to re-adjudicate this and open it back up. And I can't read the room, but I'm hearing what you all are saying, and it seems like that's not necessarily doable, especially under this timeline and so on and so forth, with the parties that are involved in the consideration. I think what would potentially help or make sense, and just make sure the mine understands the agreement that's in place, is that if the assessor's office or Sam, you with the prosecutor's office, could just indicate something along the lines of an increased assessment was headed their way in 2025, but for what has already taken place with the 63602 double N exemption, because they're under the impression that they were going to receive a tax bill similar to what they had received in 2023 and 2024, But I think what I'm hearing from the conversation is 2025 was about to be a lot bigger because there had been significant improvements made and investments made in calendar year 2025, and they would have been assessed those if this exemption hadn't already been issued by your board.
Yes, that's correct. And in terms of the numbers, I couldn't give you that. I think that the assessor's office could, but it's going to kind of be a process once the report's received.
Okay. Well, so what would be good next steps here? I'm not asking certainly for the assessor's office to go out there and reissue an assessment. I think that all parties just want clarity around what was going to happen in 2025. And if you all are saying that a large assessment was headed their way, but for the abatement that we've already agreed to, then that's fine, right? I mean, that's, they're receiving the benefit that the board has afforded them. But if that was going to be different, and if we're telling you that assets weren't going to be placed in service until 2026, and that's pushing back or negating a year of the 5-year benefit, then that's perhaps a different story. But I could just be confused, and
again,
that's why I'm asking for a little. Go ahead.
It's not based on when it's placed in service; it's when the improvements are completed. And so you're saying they're not fully completed, but I don't know what the percentage of completion is, but let's say it's 90%, you're still going to get 90% of the increased assessment.
Okay.
Yeah.
So could that be documented in an email? Again, I can go back to the mine and say, at what level do you think that you're complete at this point? And I can give you an actual number if that's helpful. And we can do a back of the envelope that way. But they were under the impression that their property tax bill had remained at roughly the same for multiple years, irrespective of their investment, because it wasn't being assessed until assets were placed in service.
And I think what the assessor was telling you is they were starting to have that discussion about going in and capturing those improvements, and then this agreement came along, so that got put on the back burner.
Okay.
No, I mean, that's what I heard right now.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's right.
So in terms of getting you a number, again, I think that that's something that the assessor's office needs to do anyway, because they want to track the improvements as we're going along so that they know what assessment springs into place once the agreement expires. So that's something definitely that can be done. I just can't promise you a timeline. That's more in their hands and honestly in your hands, because one of the main tools that they're going to use to evaluate those improvements is the report that's due in March.
Correct.
But I mean, in terms of just explaining this, I can certainly provide you with an email explaining what I'm saying right now.
I think that's perfect.
Okay. All right. Is there anything further?
So just maybe one last thing. Sorry,
Okay.
Taylor, was there anything? I've been talking too much, so if I missed anything, please jump in.
No, I think that covers it. I think an email would be much appreciated just to document the conversation and pass that information on to the mine.
Okay. Samuel, would you provide that?
Yes.
Okay. Samuel will provide that. Assessor have any other questions?
Nope.
Commissioner Dose?
No.
Commissioner Cowles? Okay. All right. Well, if there's nothing further, I appreciate you guys calling and meeting with us. And we'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Thank you.